Hello, people. I am going live because I just received Kathleen's filing that she made today. And we will read it and discuss. The other Kathleen news, too, is tomorrow she will be doing a live Q&A at noon my time. So noon Central Time. It's currently 3:22 p.m. my time. So 3 hours and 22 minutes earlier from right now, from at wherever you're at. So let's read the response. And I know the moderators are getting it posted in both in here and in Gossip. So it's sent to the Wisconsin Court of Appeals. And it says, Dear Justices, we are submitting this letter with attachments pertaining to Mr. Avery's January 24, 2019 motion to stay, appeal, and remand the cause for proceedings on claims for relief in connection with the state's violation of Wisconsin statute, blah, 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 and Youngblood versus Arizona, which is currently pending before the court. On Friday, February 8, 2019, current post-conviction counsel received 300 pages of evidence custody documents of the Calumet County Sheriff's Office pertaining to the issues raised by Mr. Avery in his motion that is pending before this court. So those things we just went live over the weekend to discuss. Okay, sorry. Couldn't find where I was. The undersigned counsel have attached Group Exhibit A, which documents the chain of custody of the suspected human bone fragments from the Manitowoc County gravel pit. Group Exhibit A documents the release of the bone fragments 7411, 12, 14, 16, 19, 20, 21, 26, and 34. As our motion indicates, these bones were returned to the family of Teresa Halbach via the Whiting Funeral Home. Group Exhibit A documents 9/20/2011 release of the bones from Deputy Jeremy Hawkins to Sergeant Mark Wiegert, who subsequently released them to the funeral home. Prior post-conviction counsel was never notified of the disclosure of the suspected human bones to the Halbach family. A review of Ms. Hagapian's, if that's how you say her name, file indicates that the evidence, property, custody documents that she received pertaining to, and then all those same numbers again, did not document the 9/20/2011 release and return to the Halbach family. Attached and incorporated herein is Group Exhibit B, the evidence, property, custody documents provided to prior counsel. The undersigned counsel respectfully requests that this court, in ruling upon Mr. Avery's pending motion, take this consideration Group Exhibit A and Group Exhibit B. And then it's signed by Kathleen. And then here's one of the documents with all these bone fragments highlighted. The 7411, 12, 14, 16, 19, 20, 21, 26, and 34. And then where it's stated on 9/20/11 by Jeremy Hawkins. And then, because this is my first time looking at this, oh, these are just more of the documents of the bones. That's all that's left there. So that's what Kathleen has filed today. Let me scroll through and see if anybody has any questions or comments. Amanda, I love your blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm not going to read all those statute numbers. There's no point. Who is this? My name is Jax West, and I run the Stephen Avery Project. I'm not a family member, just a supporter. Lauren says, is it going to do any good? You all have fought so hard and have gotten denial after denial. Right, but you just got to keep on with that fight, Lauren, right? So all this is again showing that Stephen was not given a fair trial. And the law states evidence has to remain. Okay, sorry, I'm getting messages. It has to remain in custody. So as testing, science changes, that evidence can be tested to free people who are in there that are wrongfully convicted. And also, it states on here, when you look at these, let me scroll back over to here. What do they call these? Bone fragments from sifting on of item 8650. Bone fragments. Okay, 7411 says possible bone fragments. So 7411 and 7412 are both possible bone fragments. 7416 is suspected human bone fragments. So is 19 is suspected, 20 suspected, and 7421 is unidentified suspected bone. So none of this are saying Teresa Hallback's bones. They're just saying they're suspected bones. And it's what Sweaty Sweat in trial was doing the don't look at the gravel pit because we don't even know what those bones are if they're even human. But then you gave them to the Hallback family. That makes no sense. So it's like if you gave Teresa's chapstick to Dolores. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You don't do that. So Stephen has not been given a fair trial. So if nothing else, it may not be what frees him, but he should get another trial or an evidentiary hearing, right? That's what she's trying for. All right, I'm scrolling through your comments. Where are you reading this from? It was filed with the Court of Appeals today. So, and I got it emailed to me. So I'm reading it from my email. But it was received today. The stamp on it is received today at the Clerk of Court of Appeals of Wisconsin. So, Kimberly, it feels like the floodgates of truth are opening wider. The gates of hell awaits the real criminals in this case. Yeah. People saying hello from all around the world. And I do know that Stephen really appreciates his supporters from all over. So thank you, everyone, for sticking with this case, even though it's taking forever. We all thought when Making a Murderer Part 1 came out that Stephen, it would be out just around the corner, but that hasn't happened because our system is horrible and takes forever. Okay, so people are asking, what does this mean? Well, this is again showing, this is further proof that they broke the chain of custody and they gave these suspected bone fragments to the Hallback family to bury as Teresa. So there's all kinds of wrong on that, so many levels of wrong because you went to court. Sweaty Sweat says in court, we don't even know if those are human bones. But now here, you're giving those bones to the Hallback family like they're Teresa. And so if Teresa was at the gravel pit, why would she be at the salvage yard? Why would you do something to Teresa farther away that's not your property and then bring her back to your property and sprinkle her all around. Some in the burn pit, some in the quarry, some in his burn barrels, some in Barb's burn barrels. So this could prove that the state's theory is completely wrong, because the state's theory doesn't have her in the gravel pit. Right, Brienne. Wouldn't the police have to keep any bone fragments? Correct. Yes, they do. That is the law. They have to keep the evidence. As long as the person is incarcerated, the evidence has to remain in custody. And they didn't do that. Brittany says, I used to live in Hayward, Wisconsin. Their system is messed up, always has been. I used to spend my summers in Hayward, Wisconsin. I had family that lived on the Chippewa Flowage in Coudray. And so I actually worked at a restaurant one summer as a bus person, whatever, when I was a kid, because my aunt was a waitress there. I love Hayward. Shout out in Hayward to the Big Muskie and to Wilderness Walk and the drive-in / mini golf. Karen says, you can't test bone fragments for DNA, can you? Yes, Karen, that's what Kathleen was originally going for. There's this rapid DNA ID testing that they could test those bones, and within 2 hours, they would have the results on what those bones are. Are they human? Are they animal? And since they have alleged Teresa DNA from her chapstick and her underwear and her pap smear and her vibrator, they should be able to tell if if that DNA is Teresa, if those bones are Teresa. Yes, I know, Dove. Everybody tells me about it makes my video quality bad because of that. Or not everybody, a lot of people. I just assume people don't really care. I don't care to be seen. I should, I've joked about saying I should just hang a picture over here and you don't look at me, because, I shouldn't be, I don't want to be a focal point here. I mean, it's clear, but again, it's okay. I got this. I'm not, typical people wouldn't go live looking the way I do. So, but I don't care how I look. But maybe it is something I should start doing, is because people do talk about the bright light, and that's because I'm in a Chicago suburb and we've got, I've got a bunch of snow out there, so that's why. All right, let me scroll through your thing again. Marianne says, we all know this has been unfair right from the beginning. Stephen never had a fair chance at life. I hope when he is released, he moves far away from that place and takes his parents with him. Knock on wood. I concur. Andrea asked, how's our weather here? Our weather is wacky. We're cold right now, and then we go to snow, and then we go to rain, and then we go to ice. It's bizarre. Lonnie says, I wonder if she had found anything new on Bobby. She was blasting out child porn cases last night. Almost like she got another clue leading that way. Yeah, I saw that. We've got those posted here too, that, yeah, she was tweeting about that. And then that reminds me to bring it back to that Kathleen is doing a Q&A tomorrow at noon. I know we discussed this earlier, but I know people chime in later. Kathleen will be doing a live Q&A on her Twitter tomorrow at noon my time. So it's 3:35 p.m. currently my time. So figure out your time zone from that. I will go live on Stephen Avery Project and read her tweets as they go. And the moderators here will also be taking screenshots of all the tweets, and when it's done, we'll get them posted. Her Q&A tomorrow is to be only on these bones. That's what she wants to discuss. So if you do Twitter, you'll be able to submit your questions to Kathleen. So, and see what she'll answer. And yeah, we'll go live on that tomorrow. Kathy says she was definitely in the gravel pit. That's what it's looking like, because also the dogs hit there. Kimberly says that it amazes me that those who have the power to release the two gentlemen don't. There are supporters worldwide. You're making your wonderful area look bad. A few bad apples. Stand up, the good people of this community, and demand justice. Excellent post, Kimberly. Vin says they'll never let them out because it would make them look stupid. Well, yeah, but they look stupid now, too, at this point. Either way you go, they look stupid. Deb says, where's Bobby these days? I assume he's just living his life just without social media. He's got his wife and his kids and his job and, going off and killing things when he wants. Christy says, can they order an exhume of the bones? Well, I don't know if you can order that, but the chain of custody is broken here, where you could argue that the bones in there are not the bones they were given, because how can you prove that now that they've been buried all these years and it's evidence? And so that's why evidence always has to go in a bag, and it needs to be tagged, and it's dated and initialed on whoever touched it last. So like, even then, if you open the bones up for a test, or the evidence up to test it, then when you seal it again, you have to put new tape on it that is initialed and dated. So the chain of custody is broken. You can't prove now that any of those bones will be the bones, even though they most likely are, but still it opens up that question. So again, showing that Stephen's not getting a fair trial because they have now tainted the bones from the gravel pit. Leslie says, really hope this frees Stephen and Brendan. I don't understand why the family are not eager to find the real killer or killers. Yeah. Garrett says, shouldn't this only take a short time to respond? Is it clear as day? Well, yeah, I mean, we all know from Making a Murderer Part 1, everything's clear as day, and Stephen and Brendan are innocent. And so, the doors should have just been opened up and Wisconsin be renamed Avery land. But that's not the way our system works, and they're going to hang on to this, by their fingertips as long as they can to try and keep those guys in there. Crystal says, no one especially smart enough to clean up blood is going to have body parts in the victim's car on the property. So he started off smart and got stupid, LOL. Clearly is a setup. Common sense, but it isn't so common, huh? LOL, fools, right? Brienne says 2 hours. Seriously? Wow. I know. Isn't it weird? Our technology and our science and stuff. A lot of this reminds me of, like movies we would have seen way back in the day that, it's like, oh, this is wild that, that would never happen. That's just a movie thing. So, but yeah, this, they just started really using or approving of that rapid bone DNA IDing in June of last year. Moderator says they can see me just fine. It could be people's brightness settings. Well, I know even me looking at it, when I look at my screen, it looks weird, and I know it sucks, but if you see me very well or see me like this, either way, it's not going to look great. So don't worry about that. Tori says, Bobby had a weird fetish about mutilated girls. It just scrolled, so I lost it. Sorry. But yeah, it's everything that's on Bobby's computer. And make no mistake, I don't care where that computer was in the Dassey home. I know Barb likes to try and make the excuse, blah, blah, blah. Bob, even if that computer had been in their kitchen, those things were going on the computer at times when only Bobby is at home because of Bobby working the night shift and everybody else going to work during the day or school. So that stuff was done during the day. And I know Barb and Carla like to try and say that it was Steven that went into Barb's house and used their computer. He had his own. So if you're going to go look up gross shit, aren't you going to just look in the privacy of your own home? Because if he went over to Barb's to do it, then Bobby would have been home at that time. So he'd be sleeping. So he could walk out on you at any time, where Steven's got a home with internet all to himself. His girlfriend Jody was in jail. So to try and blame for Barb and Carla to try and blame Steven for the stuff on that computer shows how low they'll go to protect a murderer and to frame Steven and Brendan. All right. Kathy says you would think her family would want to know for sure if they were Teresa's bones. The thing that I always say on that is I know people are passionate about knowing that Steven is innocent, but here's what I think about the family, the Hallback family, is they have no reason to doubt what police are telling them. And they don't want to get involved in all this other hoopla, all this fanfare. They're quiet, private people. And they have no reason to believe that law enforcement would make all this shit up. And for them to have to read all this stuff and look into it just rips that Band-Aid off their wound again. You have to remember at the end of this, no matter what happened to Teresa, unless you think there's a Hallback family conspiracy on it, that they're all in on it, which I don't think is possible at all. They lost a loved one. So this is horrible for the Hallback family, and they just want it to all go away and go on with their lives. So, I get people, I understand people, because I would want to know. I would be looking into all of this if this was my family, but we're all different. So, yeah, so I would rather people not try and put the Hallback family in any kind of a bad light. I understand why you do, but just try and think about it like that. That most people, especially if you're white, and I know I offend people when I say this, but when you're white, you tend to just believe what law enforcement tell you because you have no reason not to. You trust in our system. I trusted in our system until making a murder. And then I was like, holy shit, look at what can happen. That's, the hashtag we all live on Avery Road. It could happen to anybody. So the only thing that I think involvement with family is the one brother, Michael. I think he might have helped plant evidence that they thought they were framing a guilty man. All right, back to your comments. Michael says, your justice system is ridiculous over there in the U.S. Free both of them from London. Hear, hear. I totally agree. Sarah says, can't believe it's taken this long. They need to be freed. And it's typical here, and if you ever watch any of my videos, my thing with numbers. But Kathleen has said something like it typically takes her 15 years. She's only had the case for 2 years, 3 years now. It's horrible. I know. Carrie says they can really just open the evidence and put the sticker back on, which I think could have been a possibility also. Yeah, at this point, Carrie, the lengths that Manitowoc Sheriff's Department will go to, and Wiegert and Fassbender and Sweaty Sweat, they'll do anything. Brittany says, no need to find them. They were effed up law enforcement officers. They know it. Jeff says, even if they were guilty, it should be a mistrial for police tampering with evidence. Right. I say that to about guilters, period, on Stephen's thing. There's so much wrong with this case, even from two people being on Stephen's jury that work for the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department. How are they even in that jury pool? So there was no way that Stephen was ever going to get a not guilty, because those two people would have stayed firm on guilty because they work for Manitowoc or Sheriff's Department or had their family members that did. There's so much wrong with this case. So yes, even if, which they're not, they didn't get a fair trial. And how do you convict by the same sweaty prosecutor two people for the same crime, but it was done in two different places? Stephen's in the library with the candlestick, and Brendan is in the basement with the flashlight. It's what? This is really stupid. How can you do this? That then in Stephen's trial, Brendan isn't even mentioned in it. So she's killed in the trailer. She's killed in the garage. Why is she ever in the RAV4 then if Stephen and Brendan are it? Why is she ever in the RAV4? What sense does that make? If they're then just throwing her in the burn pit behind the garage. And the garage had crap in it. How is her vehicle going in the garage? None of it makes any sense. But people were so quick to just go, the Avery family are this weird family that live in a junkyard that have all these charges against them. Seems everybody in that family, except for Dolores, have charges of some kind. All the men in that family have something against women, of hurting women and children. So they're known in the area that people are, freaked out by that family. So people were just all so quick to say Stephen did this. And Brendan just goes down with the ship because he was an alibi. And so they needed to discredit Brendan. So they were trying to get Brendan to say that Stephen did these things, and instead, because Brendan's not, he's got the low IQ and he's not understanding what they're trying to lead him into saying. So now he implicates himself because they have to switch it to that, because if they can't get Brendan to just say he saw Stephen do this or Stephen said this to him, now Brendan has to say he took part in it. It's the only way they could get Stephen. And Brendan's in prison on his confession alone. There's no evidence that Brendan did anything. You don't even have any evidence that Brendan was in Stephen's trailer or his garage. All right, sorry. Another little rant by me. Tori says, sorry, Tori, yours just disappeared because I was blabbing. Kimberly says, making a murderer shine the light on this case. There are so many Stevens in jail who have been. I hope that law enforcement learn from this. At least something good can come out of it. We need criminal justice reform, and everybody that lives in the states, you have to get involved in the elections. You have to look at who is running for your attorney generals and your judges and your governor to try and start criminal justice reform. Very important. Phil says, surely it's been in their interest to get the real killers behind bars. Yeah. Tracy says, I like this boyfriend for this shit. Why aren't they looking at him closer? Because they don't care who did it. That's why. That's why they didn't look at Ryan Hilgas. They don't care who did it. They need to make evidence show that Stephen did it because they owe Stephen a lot of money. That's why. So if this was done by an independent law enforcement agency, then you could ask that question. And why didn't they look at Ryan Hilgast? But they don't care about Ryan. They just need stuff to say that Stephen did it. That's all. Courtney says, has nothing to do with race. And people are replying to each other. This one says, I pray he doesn't stay in there 15 more years. Knock on wood. Tori says, how did Stephen Avery's original lawyers miss all this stuff? Unprofessional and unorganized. Well, they didn't have the time, the money, the resources that is available now. Making a Murderer has really helped expose this case. And then all of you out there who are spending all that time looking through the evidence over and over and over again, all those people on Reddit and TikTok Manitowoc on Twitter, the people that are, FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, getting these documents and these exhibits and going over them. There are a million eyes looking at this case. So even Kathleen and her people have missed things, because look at the whole bone thing to begin with, that somebody had emailed Kathleen on and pointed that out to her. So, Strang and Buting just couldn't take this on with what they had. Kathleen has unlimited time, resources, money, and Redditors. So, yeah. Katie says he was fucked from the beginning. Yes, ma'am. Layla says, it's all because they never wanted to pay that compensation. How fucking low can you go? Makes my blood boil this. Innocent man ripped from his family twice. The justice system needs to get a grip, admit they were wrong, and do the right thing. Set Stephen free. Hear, hear. Christina says, hi from Australia. Just tuned in. I missed what has happened. It's just Kathleen filed today talking about the bones again and the 300-page documents that just came out on Saturday that also discuss the bones. So, and Kathleen is going to do a live Q&A tomorrow at noon, her time. So she's Central Time like me. It's almost 4 p.m. here. So 4 hours earlier from right now as this is live, not for any of you who are going to watch it after the fact. We will go live on Stephen Avery Project tomorrow, and we'll go over her tweets. Brian says, I hope for at least a retrial. The case and justice system is all wrong in this case. Yes. Jane says, the jury must have been paid. I just don't know how they came up with guilty. It's crap. Well, they were intimidated by somebody who worked for Manitowoc Sheriff's Department. Julie says, in all caps, ridiculous, not a fair trial. Kathy Ann says, but the jury pool was agreed upon by Buting and Strang. They knew he was a father and a volunteer of the Sheriff's Department, but because he answered that he, quote, felt that an officer would lie to cover his butt, unquote, as well as agreeing that they should frame someone. So Strang and Buting said, okay, personally, I think he was a plant, period. I don't know who's calling me from this 309 number that just says United States. I'm not answering that call, whatever that is. I talked to Buting personally. Oh, I sound like a name dropper. I'm just dropping that. I'm so important. But when I was at Brendan's hearing at the 7th Circuit in Chicago, and Buting was there, and I introduced him to Paul Kaluzinski afterwards and was discussing that stuff with him. He said that, they had so many more horrible people. They're only allowed X amount of strikes. So that's why those people were kept on the jury. So, but my fault is, or not my fault. My problem is, why are they in that jury pool to begin with? It's a clear problem that he's a volunteer for the sheriff's department, drives around the community service vehicle, giving people parking tickets or whatever it is they do, and his son is the you see him in pictures of escorting them in and out of the courtroom in handcuffs. How that guy shouldn't even be in the jury pool. It's a conflict. Of course he's going to defend Manitowoc Sheriff's Department, no matter what the charge is, no matter what's going on. So it shouldn't have to use up one of their strikes. He shouldn't be in the pool. Jennifer says, what happened to reasonable doubt? There's so many holes in questions and open ends and speculation. My head is spinning. Brian says, I have a feeling the blood that was tampered with was placed in the RAV4. Just saying. Well, that's the slippery slope they open up by. So no matter what there is now, everything is tainted. Everything is suspect. You can't believe any evidence they have as real. They planted a vehicle. They planted a key. They planted a bullet. So they have nothing real other than Teresa Hallback saw Stephen the last day allegedly anybody saw her alive. But then you have in those documents that were released over the weekend that a witness on that lives on Cuss Road said Teresa came to his house on November 4th. Brandy says, I still am 100% that Teresa's ex-boyfriend killed her. He had her planner, and there's zero way he got it unless he killed her. Or unless if you're, come to my way of thinking that the law enforcement got Ryan and Scott Blodorn and Michael Hallback involved when the car was found because they have the valet key, which is the key that was later planted in the vehicle. So when you're finding the car by the dam, and you have to get it over to the salvage yard, and then you're able to, because if Ryan did it, I don't think he'd be trying to get people to truly find any of the evidence, even with trying to plant it at the salvage yard. He's leading these search parties and giving somebody a direct line of where to find it. I think that they got involved too because of this car found, and they needed the key, and they needed access to her voicemail and all those kinds of things. So, and that Ryan and Scott and Michael thought they were framing a guilty man, that law enforcement convinced them that this is a dirtbag and he did this, and he was suing them for $36 million and he'd get away with it. So they were desperate to make sure he went to prison. So that's how I think Ryan Hilgas is involved. Jamie says, we need Making Murder 3 ASAP. Get more eyes and pressure on the government. Can't wait to the new season to see more corrupt cops. Stephen's old lawyers were good, to be honest. They just didn't have all that back then. Correct. Caroline says, Stephen should not be in jail. Love from your Northern Irish supporters. I agree. Let him out. Stephen and Brendan should be free while new cases are being prepared, and when it goes to court and all that, they should be home. They should not be in prison. There's nothing that proves either one of them are guilty. And don't give me any bullshit of a jury convicted them. Juries are also bullshit. Everything is bullshit. I'm sorry with all my swearing. I've served on a jury. People are idiots. It doesn't matter. A jury convicted them. No, that doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. I'm sorry. Get mad at me. Send me all your hate mail. But they're not giving all the facts. They have their little sidebars, and this is inadmissible or that, and blah, blah, blah. So a jury isn't given the full story. So how can you hang anything on what a jury thinks? We know more than the jury does. We see more. We read more. So jury's not the end all be all on what happened. We know way more than they do. Haley, can I ask a question? In the interview with Brendan, how did the police know all this happened, i.e. rape, cutting her throat, burning the body? If they know all that, how the fuck can they tell from, and now your thing disappeared? So I can't read the rest. But they didn't want Brendan to say those things. At that point, here's what happened. This was the end of February. So they had interviewed Brendan on the 26th and the 27th. Then they didn't on the 28th. And then they brought him back in on March 1st. I believe those are the dates. But again, numbers, and my brain doesn't compute numbers. So what happened on the one date that they didn't question him? That's the day the magic bullet was found. So up until then, because this is the end of February, and now remember, Teresa went missing Halloween the year prior, so you've got all those months in between there. There was never any mention that she was shot. But now they find a bullet, or plant a bullet. So they need Brendan to say that they shot her. What'd you do, Brendan? What'd you do to her head, Brendan? Punched her? Okay, what else, Brendan? Cut her throat? Okay, Brendan, what else did you do? Cut her hair? Okay, Brendan, I'm just going to come out and say this. Who shot her in the head? That right there, that's not even leading the witness. That's becoming the witness. I didn't think of it, is Brendan's answer. I didn't think of it. Because Brendan he had no idea what they were trying to lead him to say. So that's where all the punched and the cut hair and this, that, it's just him guessing. It's him reaching at what is it that they want me to say? And they keep going at him until they get him to say what they want. But by him saying first who shot her, you lose that big bombshell of, yep, see, that's why there's a bullet in the garage, because Brendan said she was shot. Well, no, Brendan didn't say she was shot. Law enforcement said she was shot, and then Brendan was just real quick to go, it wasn't me. Who shot her in the head? It was Steven. Not me, because, no matter what your IQ is, if somebody's going to ask you between two people who shot somebody, you're going to say the other guy, not me. Sorry. I go off on these weird little things. Caroline says, you could see the injustice in Steven's face when he was wrongly convicted for the second time. My heart went out to him and his family. That is one of the biggest heartbreaking moments, when you see him just shake his head and look down. Because how horrible is that? That this man basically has lost his entire adult life. This first case started when he was 22, right? The Penny Bernstein case. He was 22 with that one, I believe. And his twin sons had just been born. 18 years. He had no support, well, other than Alan and Dolores. The rest of his family said he was guilty. Didn't go see him, didn't care. He had no fangirls writing him letters and wanting to go visit him, to, nobody wanting to say they're his girlfriend. He was sitting in there and rotting. Writing letters on his own behalf to the Innocence Project. And then finally they took him and tested that DNA and found out he was innocent. But then when he gets out after 18 years, He's living in an ice shanty. You know, there's all these people that were around him. You see it in Making a Murderer that, yay, he's home, but he's living in an ice shanty. And then he starts dating Jody, and they rent Raleigh Johnson's trailer that's next to the Avery property. His depositions are starting. You know, he's been free 2 years. Things are turning around. He's about to get $400 and something thousand from the state. That will be plenty to tide him over while he's waiting for his trial, or for the court case for the $36 million. And then this happens. And now he's locked away again. His family, once again, except for Alan and Dolores, say he's guilty. He sits in prison, rots away again until Making a Murderer comes out. Becomes this big sensation. And then all the family that hate him and say he's guilty now go back to, oh, Stephen's innocent, so we can get attention and money and fans. So yet Making a Murderer has been out, you know, it's been 3 years, right? And Stephen's still in prison. Family's not visiting him, but they're making money on him. And Stephen has to just sit there and wait. It's really tragic. It is, you know, they've taken his entire life. And then his, you know, so Stephen and Alan and Dolores, there's not enough money in the world that can pay those three back for what the state, what Manitowoc has taken from them. So horrible. Kathy says they believe Stephen did it, made sure the evidence was there, and now they can't make it right because they would be sent to jail. Not only that, it's every case they've ever been involved in is now suspect. And we already know from the Carmen Bootwell case and the Ricky Hackstetler case, those are two other cases that are suspicious. So we know of those. How many more are there? So now you have to question what they have done with evidence in every single case any of those people have ever been involved in. All those other people should be automatically getting new trials. It opens up such a huge can of worms. Caroline says, that poor woman's family still haven't got justice for her murder, who is still walking the streets. Tara says, that's U.S. justice for you. Acquit OJ, who is obviously guilty, and imprison Stephen and Brendan, who are obviously innocent. It has nothing to do with true facts, just whose lawyer tells the best story. Yep. And like Stephen says, poor people lose. Poor people lose all the time. OJ was able to hire all these great attorneys and all the DNA, you know, the scientists and, you know, everything. So money helped him get away with a double murder. Victoria says, are there any more protests or anything happening? Protests and rallies and whatnot don't do anything for the case. Trust me, I'm a big political activist, and I have scheduled more protests. Well, I can't count very well, so me saying more than I can count really doesn't say anything. It doesn't do anything. That doesn't do anything. Petitions don't do anything. You have to work on your legal system. We need the criminal justice reform, and we just need to make sure that Kathleen has whatever she needs to continue this fight. it all rests on Kathleen. Kathy Ann says jurors have been known to get it wrong many times over. And Tracy says the jury was paid off. Kimberly says, I would travel from Eastern Canada to protest or anything that might help. Protest doesn't help. That's more for the people, yourself, that people, they're angry and they want to do something and they want to help. And so I feel that if I make this sign and hold it up and yell free Stephen Avery, I've done something for the cause. You haven't. And so like the rallies that they have up in Manitowoc every year are actually a joke and make our side look bad. That this is such a huge case. So, how many millions of people watched it on Netflix? And then when you do the rally, 30 people show up and 15 of them are family. So it's cringeworthy when I see these rallies. So what you can do is just continue to have people watch Making a Murderer and, try and get on criminal justice reform. It's really, like I said, it's all on Kathleen. Kathy says, I agree with you. The jury convicting him means nothing in this case. Kimberly, I already read yours. Stephen says, Bobby Dassey and Scott are the obvious guilty parties. There's just too much that they had access to. I agree. Caroline says, exactly. There is no evidence linking both of them to that crime. Tashina asks, how's Stephen's parents? That has to be the most asked question every time we go live. So many people have so much empathy for Stephen's parents. There's so much love and concern for them. And my answer is always the same. Now, I don't have any contact with Alan Dolores, but it's always just going to be the same. They're getting older. They're getting tired. They just want Stephen home. Layla says, isn't it a bit funny that Sergeant Link was involved all the way, even when it wasn't under his jurisdiction? And don't get me started on Sweaty Sweat Sweat. What a weasel of a man, a complete oxygen thief. Oh, now you're saying the president needs to look at this. We need a worldwide petition set up. The president can't do anything in Stephen's case because it's a state case. President can only get involved on federal cases, and then it's also a pardon makes you think the person's still guilty. So he needs to get out a free man and that he can sue everybody and take everything. I want Stephen to become Manitowoc's Grinch. So Fassbender, you go and eat this big, turkey sandwich and Stephen can just yoink, this is mine now. Everything you have is mine. This is mine. Stephanie says, they fed Brendan that whole made-up story. Ian said, why would the PD give Teresa's family suspected bones? Surely that is raising the family's expectations and an admission they know them to be the bones. Have they DNA tested them and not released the details? I highly doubt it. I'm sure it's, again, thing that I say that the family has no reason to doubt law enforcement. Law enforcement, the police are your friends and the police are telling you this is what this is. And you go, okay, so the family, the Hallback family at the end of all this should be upset too, because the Manitowoc didn't just victimize Stephen, Alan, and Dolores and Brendan. They have victimized the Hallback family because they have let this family believe that this all happened to Teresa when there's no evidence that any of this happened. So the Hallback family is living with these thoughts of her being raped by two men and her throat slashed and stabbed in the stomach and shot and still won't die. And then she's cut into pieces and burned. And, so that's what the family thinks of. There's no proof that any of that happened. All we know is Teresa's never been seen again. That's all there is. Kristen says, cleaned up all that blood in the garage, but missed a bullet. Okay. Mm-hmm. But left all the dust. So you cleaned everything up where you're able to get all the blood gone from shooting somebody in the garage, but the dust is all still there. Jackie says, this is one of the biggest miscarriages of justice I have ever seen. I cannot believe all the judges could be so blind, or should I say choose to turn a blind eye. Yeah. Justice is supposed to be blind, but not like this, right? Lady Justice has got the blindfold on. Massimo says, no body, no blood. Where's the murder? Right. Kathy Ann says, don't worry about ranting. You're doing live what we are all doing in the privacy of our homes. Yep. Stephanie says, just watch the Kevin Fox confession. Same thing happened, and he is a grown adult. It's been a long time since I've looked into anything on the Kevin Riley Fox case. I live in Illinois where that happened, so I do remember it some when it was happening because it was so major here. But, Kathleen went all out on that case as well, where she even got a big dead pig and threw it off a bridge into the water that would be about the same size and weight of this child to see where the current would have taken that child. And I know I saw people in gossip over the weekend were posting that it was on the ID channel, the Riley Fox case. I need to watch that again. But so yeah, I do. If you're looking for something to watch that Kathleen has done, it's the Riley Fox case. Is Kevin Fox her stepfather or her father? Her biological father. Not that it matters because he's her dad, whichever way. So, Kimberly, it just disappeared on me. Kristen says, Jody pisses me off. She's a drunk. Crystal says, of course they want the damn money. I hope he sends everyone to hell and takes his parents and his money and get out of Dodge. Yeah. Tori says, I live in Minnesota and I'm afraid to go to Wisconsin. All right, let me speak on behalf of Wisconsin right now. I love Wisconsin. I spent my summers there as a child. I have, my grandmother is buried up by Hayward. I have a lot of fond memories of Wisconsin. Wisconsin is very beautiful, very peaceful. They have awesome cheese. If you're ever in Wisconsin, go to the Mars Cheese Castle. It's to die for. There's bad people everywhere. So I know there are people, because a lot of times people, love where they come from, and people get hurt and offended when people always blame Wisconsin. It's not Wisconsin. It's these individual people at the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department and Sweat and the judges. It's not all. I was just in Wisconsin last week since I had to go to court since Manitowoc Sheriff's Department is claiming I trespassed somewhere in Wisconsin on a date I can prove I was home in Illinois. So I was in Wisconsin. Nothing happened to me. After court, I went back to the scene of the crime. I went to the places there. Because I'm trying to figure out where they even say I was trespassing, because the ticket doesn't tell me. It just gives me coordinates. So I went there to go look there, but even where their coordinates are, is someplace I've never been, ever, not even just on that date. The only place that when I've gone up there, when I've gotten out of my vehicle, there's no trespassing signs. So, but this didn't happen to, Wisconsin didn't do that to me. Manitowoc Sheriff's Department did that to me. Manitowoc Sheriff's Department is who is consistently doing these things to Stephen. So don't be afraid of Wisconsin. Wisconsin is lovely. Their lakes and their woods and we were talking about Hayward earlier, where I spent my summers. And so at Hayward, there's this big giant muskie that is, in their little tourist trap area where you can climb up and, go in this muskie. Wilderness Walk is a place I loved going to as a kid, which is a zoo where, the goats are just there and you're going. I know a lot of people have things against zoos and having things in cages, but you're walking through these lovely woods and seeing the animals, and they've got the lumberjack restaurant and the lumberjack games where you see the people doing those log rolls things and all, the fudge, or watching them make the taffy, the saltwater taffy. Oh, yeah. So it's not all of Wisconsin. Wisconsin is beautiful. Keep the blame where the blame belongs. Manitowoc Sheriff's Department. And sweaty sweat. Kathy says, is there a way we can write to them? Yes, we have a pinned post where you can write to Stephen and to Brendan. We also have in a pinned post where you can and I see the person I just answered is also messaging, where you can donate straight to Stephen's canteen or Brendan's canteen. And Kathy asked, will Stephen write back? Not usually. As you can imagine, and she's just messaging now saying, I'm sure he has tons of people writing him. He's not the best writer. So, and then he's been burned twice now by women who lead him on, because all Stephen wants is to be loved. He wants to be in love. He wants a wife. He wants a family. And these stalker fans lead him on like they're going to be his girlfriend. And then they end up selling his letters. So he doesn't like to write to a lot of people because now you never know what's going to happen. So, but I always tell people, if you're going to write to Stephen, you're not doing it to get a letter in return. You're doing it because it brightens his day. He likes to see that he's got all these people from all over the world, because he has no concept of the internet. He doesn't understand what Facebook is. So it's cool to get all these letters from all around the world of, I can't believe these people care about me. So you're able to brighten his day just a tiny bit by sending him a letter. So don't write him just because you're anticipating a letter back. Write him because you want to make him feel a little bit better and, show him that he's got your support. No, Sky and Christy, if you're talking about Window Jesus, he's always been in this. Why can't I ever do this right? This window over here. Claudia says, Stephen's still not free? Hallucinating. What's going on in this country? I often hear Kathleen, but can someone translate into French? Oh, I can't, Claudia. I'm sorry. I can only speak my nasty English. Oh my God. Sky always cracks me up about Window Jesus. Jody, love to Window Jesus from Minnesota. Kathy says they knew they were her bones. Yeah. But you'll never know for sure. There's no way to ever know for sure since I broke the chain of custody. Tristan says, I just joined. What did I miss? We're discussing Kathleen filed a response all about those bones that we're still waiting for the court to decide on. And are we going to get some kind of evidentiary hearing or something because of these bones from the Manitowoc gravel pit? And that Kathleen will be doing a live Twitter Q&A tomorrow at noon her time. It's almost 4:30 p.m. my time, which is the same as Kathleen's. So 4.5 hours earlier from right now if you're watching this live, not if you're watching it on Memorex. Lisa says, my God, there's no way they cleaned up that much fucking blood. Jane says, if she was raped and throat slashed, wouldn't the mattress be covered in blood and semen? One would think. Christy says, I have never understood why her college read something like, do we want the people who really did this to get, sure, but that's secondary. Like, what the fuck? I know, I did the same thing in watching part 2. Really? Oh, I don't understand. And then I even questioned going, is this even somebody who really even knew her? Or is this going to be the, I had a class with her. So now that this is some famous case, I'm going to act like I was a better friend than I was, just so I can get on TV. Brenda said, I wonder what they did with the bones. Did they bury them? Did they cremate them? I wouldn't want to hold on to the bones. Well, they were delivered to a funeral home. So has anybody ever determined what the funeral home did? Were the bones buried or were they cremated? Or they could have been cremated and then buried. I don't know. Shelley says, I'm feeling like he didn't have the evidence ledgers until last week. I'm totally confused. Yeah, well, again, that's a thanks to the Redditor who FOIA'd those ledgers that came out over the weekend. Karen says, have they noticed any other missing women in that general area or in Wisconsin, etc., since Stephen Brendan went to jail? There are lots. So, because I know there's people like even a moderator here at Stephen Avery Project, she does not think that this would be Bobby's only crime because he was so sick. Christy is talking about the Riley Fox one, thinking it's on ID Go if you have that channel. All right, I'll have to look for it. Maybe when I'm done with this, I'll go see if I can watch the Riley Fox thing again, because it's been years for me since I've looked into the Riley Fox case at all. Kristen says, Kathleen was involved early in the Kevin Riley Fox case. She was amazing in that case. Stephanie said, so many unanswered questions, but Stephen definitely didn't do it. I mean, how did he remove every single bit of evidence from his home, but murder and rape her in his bedroom? I know Brendan is innocent as well, but seriously, who confesses to something they didn't do, especially that? My 4-year-old knows better. Hold on, scratchy throat. Stephanie, it happens all the time. There are so many cases, not just Brendan with a low IQ, that confess to something they didn't do. Oh, I shouldn't have coughed into my hand, right? The cops are trained how to trick you. So you should never talk to them ever for no reason, because the cops are out to, they're out for their narrative, not to get to the truth. And so another one of Kathleen's cases, Melissa Kaluzinski. I'm very close to Melissa's family. I visit Melissa in prison. Melissa has a similar IQ to Brendan, and she was questioned for hours. And you can see it online on YouTube, Melissa Kaluzinski's interrogation, over and over again. And I know somebody will end up posting in here because there is the running tally of how many times she said she didn't do it. And eventually they told her, oh, we know it's an accident. whatever happens, an accident. Just say it was an accident and this will all be over. So she thought she would just say it's an accident, say what they're telling her to say, and she's going to go home. And she's been in prison now for 10 years. January was the 10-year anniversary of Melissa being incarcerated. So, Central Park 5. So a lot of people get tricked into it. They know how to do those mind games. When you look at that read technique, so Google read technique, REID. That's what they use. That's what got, and not that it takes a well-trained interrogator to trick Brendan into saying anything, because his mother has been manipulating him all these years. So, and she's no genius. But when you look at Brendan's interrogation, you can see all these things of put him in a small room, make it so he can't see the door, that there's not an easy path to the door to get out. The way they lean into him, the way they touch him, all this read technique. So people confess all the time. It's really sad. Lisa says, I just joined. What happened? I can't see the comments. Oh, that sucks, Lisa, that you can't see the comments. We're discussing Kathleen's filing today that's about the bones. It's just a page long. We do have it posted here. Claudia says, I'd like so much that they release Stephen. Yeah. Kathy says, I got chills when that person said that was secondary. So sad. Fook says, oh my God, I can't wait for Judgment Day. Hannah says, they need to hear the case right and what happened to no Manitowoc sheriffs. Steele says, I hate two of Steve's fiancés, right? God, people have been horrible to Stephen. Scroll. Kathy says, why is Bobby silent? Right? Leanne said, no way is this Bobby's only crime. He is evil to the core. Natalie says, lots of missing women, but no one to pin it on. And Jane tells me Riley Fox is on YouTube. Thank you very much, Jane. Ricky says, Bobby is going to his grave with blood on his hands. Crystal says, how can anyone have a relationship or even sleep in the same bed with Bobby? Like, what the fuck? They're sick too. Well, and the woman that Bobby is married to is like his high school sweetheart. So he was actually dating her at the time that this happened. And hello to the people still getting hellos from around the world. Jane says, if Bobby did it, he would have definitely done more. He's a criminologist's dream. Yeah. Heidi says, watched Fox case twice on ID the other night. Lisa says, and no marks on the bedpost, no chains found. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Floki says, won't bother you for a long resume, but just tell me, are we primarily listening to good or bad news? We're not listening to either. It's just another filing from Kathleen on those bones. We're still waiting to hear from the court to determine if they're going to give an evidentiary hearing on these bones. Ricky says, that's so sad. That's Melissa's case. Yeah. Kristen says, false confessions happen often. And hello to Jack again. Natalie says, what's Brendan Bobby's mother saying now? Obviously, she believes Brendan's innocent, but what about the evidence against Bobby? Does she believe he's innocent too? It's complicated on my view on Barb in this whole thing. I think Barb loves all her boys, and maybe I'll put her in the same box that I put the Hallback family in. And that she's just putting, so the Hallback family's got blind trust in law enforcement, and Barb puts blind trust into Bobby and Scott. And that she just believes that they were manipulated by police like Brendan was. But then that still doesn't explain why Barb and Scott and Bobby would continue to talk to I can never remember which is which out of Fassbender and Uyghur on who came out of retirement that they all then talked to recently. Why do they continually go and talk to the state, but they don't go talk to Kathleen? Because I know I talked to Scott myself and asked him why he gave all these different heights of the fire. It's this tall, it's this tall. And he said it's because they kept manipulating him, wanting him to say, thank you, Christy just told me it's Dietering that came out of retirement. That they kept manipulating him, wanting him to say the fire was bigger than it was. Well, if law enforcement did these things to Scott and Bobby, go to Kathleen. Because let Kathleen clear you. Because Kathleen isn't in this to go, I say this person did it and let's, make the narrative. She's not Manitowoc Sheriff's Department. She's not about, her narrative. She just wants the truth. So then if you're innocent, let her clear you. But they don't do that. So that makes it even more suspicious. How do you spell Melissa's last name? Calusinski. Kathleen will be filing for Melissa at the end of March is the next thing in Melissa's case. She could file earlier than that, but the deadline, I believe, is March 27th on Melissa's case. Lynn says, and they didn't give her anything to drink or eat. Oh yeah, Melissa. And when Melissa called her dad, they were in the background calling Melissa a bitch. Her dad was livid. Oh, ugly case. Stephanie says, confessions like this happen to smart people too. No, we don't understand why someone would confess to stuff like this, but we haven't been in a situation like this either. Right. You just don't get it when you're stuck in that room they're trained to do this to you. And they just want that confession and they don't care how they get it. Christy says, Riley Fox is on Eyewitness, The Accused, Season 1, Episode 3. Thank you. People replying to each other. Ricky says, Barb is a nasty bit of work. I do feel bad for Barb. Barb has the low IQ too. And she loves her boys, and she's out of her depth in this whole thing. Leanne says, Barb needs to go shit in her hand and pat herself on the head. Victoria says, when is the judgment day? It should have been how many years ago? Lisa says, goading him on to draw pictures of what happened, except they were not really that in his mind. Ew, it makes my blood boil. That part in Making a Murderer Part 1 with Michael O'Kelly. That's my angriest part in the whole thing when I was the first time I saw it punching my couch. That is, Michael Kelly needs to be in prison too. Christy says, Barb's impact statement at Brendan's sentencing was deplorable. I don't remember it, but yeah, I'm sure. Bailey, can I get a rundown? I just joined. Hopefully you got it already because I've already been on for an hour and 19 minutes. So, but once I'm no longer live, this will still be posted and you can go over it again if you so want, or just read the comments. People replying. Julie says, what's up with ordering a shirt to benefit Melissa? We haven't even looked into that at all. I've got so much on my plate. I know Paul has a couple shirts left. They're shirts that Kathleen had made a couple years ago, and they're black shirts. Then in white writing it says "Free Melissa" on the front, and then it says "Justice Denied" on the back. So there are a couple of those shirts left. I don't remember what sizes they are. Um, I'll talk. I'll talk to Paul about it. I talked to him today, but he was calling me today, all excited that he's been doing a lot of fishing. It's one of the things that Paul loves to do the most. So he's been going ice fishing, and it's also a way that he feels good about helping his family, that, you know, because Paul is disabled, so he can't work. And so his wife works to support them. And, you know, so Paul does cooking and stuff, and Paul's an excellent cook. And so he's so excited to go get fish to provide for he and his wife for meals. So Paul was going fishing today. Kristen says, I still think Bobby torched the blazer a year prior to Teresa's disappearance. Jane says, I'm addicted to ID channel. I watch the American one live constantly. I do too. And when I can give you the for sure, I've just been asked to join an organization that is all about helping the wrongfully accused. And so one of the things they want me to do is one of the cases that they cover currently is going to have an episode filmed for the ID channel, and they want me to be on the episode. So when that's all finalized, I will let y'all know on that. Dan asked, do you think Stephen is innocent? 100%. That is the only thing in this case I am 100% sure of, is that Stephen and Brendan are innocent. Natalie says, what's going on in that family? With all the suspicion about Bobby and Brendan and Stephen being locked up, is the family now fractured, i.e., does Steve's parents still speak to Bobby, Barb? Can't imagine them all in the same room. No, they don't really get along. And the family has never really gotten along. So they'll go years without speaking to one another, and then they'll see each other on occasion, or, you know, so like a holiday or whatever. I don't think Bobby ever goes and visits with his grandparents. The grandparents never go and visit Brendan in prison. They barely visit Stephen now as it is too, because of their physical health. They just can't. Dolores can't walk very well. It's really hard on her. So they don't see Stephen very often. Barb and her parents don't get along a lot of the time. And same thing with a lot of them in the family. You'll see it play out on Facebook. The constant public fights between family members. So, and it's hard to keep up with who likes who at this moment. Trine says, do you think Stephen will ever be released? I have a bad feeling. I have to stay hopeful he'll be released, because it would be way too hard to continue on doing this if there was never that end in sight. So, but I am a very pessimistic person on most everything. So, but I'm staying hopeful. And then Claudia's asking the same thing. Is Stephen going to be able to come out someday? Jack asking, how are the parents? The same, answered that earlier. Ricky says, if I was Bobby, I would be shouting from the rooftops to make a point that I am innocent. But no, he is sat there being quiet as he was paid to do. Bessa says, hello from Switzerland. My boyfriend and I think every day about Stephen and Brendan. This is so sad. Jason from Ireland, can't believe people think Stephen is still guilty. I know. Julie, have you already announced KZ's Q&A tomorrow at noon Central? Yes, and I'll make a Facebook event with a reminder of the time that we'll go live here on Stephen Avery Project and cover that. Sue said, whether or not those bones belong to Teresa, they should be tested. I agree. I'm dying to see what the test, an independent test. I don't want no Leslie Eisenberg or Sherry Culhane going anywhere near any evidence. Linda Freeman says, I think Sweaty Sweat Sweat was actually saying what he would like to do when he made up that happened in the trailer. Horrible fat pig. I concur. Leanne says, I really, really hope they are released soon. I honestly cannot believe they still have them locked up. I just don't get it. Tony says, are the officers involved still serving? Some are retired, and then they pull out of retirement to try and follow around Kathleen to see what she's doing and try and figure it out. Carrie says, are you related to the Averys? No, I am not. I am just a supporter. Shirley says, how is Kathleen? Busy, busy, busy. She took on a new case too and got several cases, and I don't know how the woman ever sleeps. Lisa says, there's nothing we could all do if we got together and had a rally? No. Goodness, it's so sad. I pray Stephen gets out and has some time left with his precious parents. A rally does nothing. A rally is just to get on camera. Really, that's all that does. And for the people who attend the rally to go look at me. Or to socialize. It doesn't do anything to affect their case. It does absolutely nothing. So it's of no benefit to the people in prison. It only benefits the people who attend it to, again, go look at me and I want to talk to a camera. Jane says, Kathleen is every innocent person's dream. She has spent her time trying to exonerate innocent men and women. She's absolutely outstanding, and I respect her so much. Well, and that's something that Kathleen is able to do or does do that many others don't. She will only take a case if she knows they're innocent. And she says she's a guilty person's worst nightmare, because if she finds out you're guilty, she'll get you. Floki says, how can the Hallbacks have complete trust in the system when they have eyes like the rest of us, and we have all been witnesses to Stephen's first miscarriage of justice? Is this the right word? Sorry for my bad English. No, you're excellent. Your English is excellent and probably even way better than mine, and it's my only language. So no worries on your language, because they're not looking into everything that we do, because they feel like it's just a made-up TV show, and they don't want to watch it. So, and when you even have, from Stephen's first case, Penny Bernstein, the victim, as soon as Stephen is charged on this, she right away is saying he's guilty on this one. I can't believe she would do that. I'm so disgusted by Penny Bernstein and the Wisconsin Innocence Project and everybody that was working on that Stephen Avery's law, or whatever they were calling it at the time. That's so quick that would go, yep, Stephen did this one. You are personally involved in what happened to him the first time. How could you just so quick jump to that? I know. Like, when you see Stephen on Making a Murderer, you're seeing a lot of, nice Stephen. There is times when Stephen can be a dick, right? I readily say I'm not a nice person. I can be quite nasty, so I'm not saying that about Stephen as a bad thing, because Lord knows with everything that Stephen's been through, he should hate the world. He should want to set the world on fire. Hate everybody. So he's going to have bad moments. So there are people who don't like him. That's life. People like you, people hate you, whatever. So, but even if Steven's a dick, it doesn't mean he murdered somebody. You know? And so it just infuriates me that they were so quick to abandon him the second time around when they knew he was innocent that first time. Leanne says, I can't feel sorry for her. She should have done what was right by her kids, and she never. I understand. Tim says, have they ever searched the area where the RAV was seen to see if the battery was ever tossed in the area? Well, I know people walked through and found stuff, like a phone was found some over there, right? But again, they don't care about finding evidence that's going to prove anything other than Stephen did it. Natalie says, exactly. So sad all around. But if one of my sons was innocent and the other gave false evidence against him, I'd have nothing to do with him. I get she's their mother, but even she must have doubts about Scott and Bobby while Brendan's locked up. It's disgusting. Talk about burying your head in the sand. I agree with you. Karen says, I knew someone in California. When the police came to tell her her husband was dead, they took her into questioning. After a few hours of hell, because she just found out her husband was dead, they said, you can go now. We already knew he killed himself. Cops in the USA are horrible. Oh, wow. That's sad. Leanne says, thanks, Jax. Appreciate all your time to let us know what's happening and to break it down for the likes of me. LOL. Well, actually, I talked through this with you guys too, because like even this, the reason we came on this letter, I didn't read it until I read it out loud with you guys so we can all learn it together. Plus, being in the UK, some things I have no idea what it means. LOL. Well, Leanne, that's something I should ask you that people ask all the time. So the X at the end of your post, that's something that people here in the States don't understand. Why do you guys end a post by putting an X at the end of it? You know, because every person from the UK, you always see that. So Leanne or somebody else from the UK, if you would like to explain that, please do, because we get people message Stephen Avery Project and stuff just on that question. Dennis says, anything new on Scott and Bobby's role in statement inconsistencies? I saw something in those documents this weekend, but I didn't quite see it again. So somebody else, if you saw it or know it, please say something. Something about Bobby calling queso on like the 4th, November 4th. So somebody tell me about that. Ew, that's a dumb email I just got. Carla says, my heart absolutely aches for Dolores. I will be on 6 more minutes because I will end this at 5 p.m. my time. Tony says, you would think Scott and Bobby would do whatever it takes to clear their name. I also don't understand why Scott was so pissed off at Steve. Sounds suspicious to me. Well, here's what went on with Stephen. Those 2 years that he was free, he was not nice to a lot of people in his family. He's a little pissed off that he spent 18 years in prison and his family said he did it. Nobody visited him. And now they were all just basically eating his shit because they wanted their a share of his $36 million. So Stephen knew that they were going to put up with whatever he dished out at him because they want his money. So he could treat them any way he wanted. And they're not going anywhere because they just cared about that money. So they didn't like him and they were jealous that money was coming. So, and that's another motive that people have talked about, that maybe Scott and Bobby in their stupidity thought if they killed somebody and pinned it on Stephen, that $36 million suit still would continue, but since Stephen's in prison, he wouldn't get it, and then the family would get all that money. And there's your motive. So Jane says, oh my God, Jax, that's great. If I lived in the U.S., I would definitely be volunteering to get innocent people exonerated. It's my passion. Yeah, it was pretty wild that I was just reached out to the other day and offered a position with this organization, but I won't get into it too much until I know it's a for sure thing. Natalie says, thanks for replying. It's just sad all around, but poor Stephen, Brendan, and his parents. Hannah says, I absolutely cannot understand how and why the hell he's still in there. This is beyond ridiculous. I pray for you guys every day. Andrew says, I don't think he's ever getting out. I get it, but, I just tell people try and stay positive. Jason says, my heart bleeds for Dolores. I just feel so sorry for what she has been put through. I pray she lives to see her son be released. Claudia says, I thought Kathleen would file her case in the Supreme Court in December. So why do they keep Stephen? Claudia, so originally she was supposed to be filing, but not with the Supreme Court. She's still on the state level at the end of December. But instead she filed this stay and remand, trying to get this bone thing figured out from the gravel pit. So that's what things are circling around right now, is the Manitowoc gravel pit bones. So, and they have to keep Stephen because Stephen is convicted right now. You have to try and get the courts to overturn that. And it's just this long process here. So that's why he's in custody, because he's still a convicted murderer. Hannah says they would just tamper with it or lose the evidence. Fucking stupid people, man. Claudia says, speak less quickly. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know I'm a really fast talker. I hope you understand the thing that I just explained to you. Kristen says, anyone know what, if any, position has Tony Evers taken on this case? I haven't heard anything, but I haven't been following him at all. Julie says, any word on the rumor that Factbender is working at a hospital in the security department? It's not Factbender, it's Andrew Colburn is a security guard at a hospital. A picture. Oh, my son's texting me, sorry. There's a picture of him posted. I think it's in our group MAM Gossip somewhere is where it got posted, that somebody was at a Wisconsin hospital and saw him and took a picture of it. So yeah, Colburn is a security guard at a hospital. So, all right, we are at 5:00 now. So I'm sorry, as usual, I didn't get to everybody's questions or comments. So it is 5 p.m. here right now. Kathleen will be going live on her Twitter tomorrow at noon, my time. So 5 hours earlier from right now, your time, is when Kathleen will be doing a live Q&A. We will go live on Stephen Avery Project, and I will read the tweets as it happens, and the moderators will be taking screenshots of it, and when it's all over, we'll get them all posted. So those of you who can't or don't like participating in a live video, you can just read them for yourselves. So until then, you can discuss it, the case here in Stephen Avery Project, or also in our MAM Gossip, where we go more into Stephen's case and where we also discuss the other cases like Melissa Kaluzinski and Riley Fox and Abducted in Plain Sight. I just made my boyfriend watch that last night. If you haven't watched that on Netflix, watch it. That's a clear WTF. So, all right, until tomorrow at noon, have a good evening.